The Toxic Workplace Trap, Why You Stay and How to Break Free. Introduction. You wake up, your alarm rings, and before your feet even touch the floor, there's a feeling, not tiredness, not laziness, something heavier, a quiet resistance. You tell yourself it's just another day. But deep down, you already know this isn't just work, it's a trap. A toxic workplace doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers. It convinces you to stay, to endure, to shrink. And over time, you forget what a healthy life feels like. This audiobook is not just about understanding why you stay. It's about learning how to leave mentally, emotionally, and eventually physically. Chapter 1. The Silent Normalization of Toxicity. Toxic environments rarely begin as toxic. At first, it's small things. A rude comment brushed off as just how they are. A late-night message labeled as dedication. A skipped lunch break that becomes a daily habit. Over time, these behaviors stop feeling unusual. They become normal. Real-life scenario. Anna started her job excited and motivated. In her first month, her boss occasionally raised his voice. By month 6, yelling became part of daily operations. By year 2, Anna no longer noticed it, until a friend pointed out how anxious she sounded on calls. Key insight. Humans adapt quickly, even to harmful environments. You don't notice the toxicity because you've learned to survive it. Chapter 2. The Hope That Keeps You Stuck. One of the strongest traps is hope. You tell yourself, it will get better. Maybe next month will be different. If I work harder, they'll treat me better. Hope can be powerful, but in toxic workplaces it becomes a chain. Real-life scenario. Mark stayed in a job for 4 years waiting for a promised promotion. Each year he was told, "You're almost there." The promotion never came, but the hope did. Key insight. Hope without evidence keeps you stuck longer than fear. Chapter 3. Fear of the unknown. Leaving feels risky. What if the next job is worse? What if you fail? What if you regret it? So you stay not because it's good, but because it's familiar. Real-life scenario. Jessa hated her manager but stayed because she had a stable salary. When she finally left, she realized her new workplace respected boundaries. Something she had forgotten was normal. Key insight. Your mind prefers a known pain over an unknown possibility. Chapter 4. The Gradual Loss of Self-Worth. Toxic workplaces slowly erode confidence, not in one moment, but in repeated, subtle ways. Your ideas are ignored. Your efforts are undervalued. Your mistakes are magnified. Eventually, you begin to believe, maybe I'm the problem. Real-life scenario. Lewis used to be confident. After years of being criticized publicly in meetings, he stopped speaking up entirely, even outside of work. Key insight. Toxicity doesn't just hurt your job, it reshapes how you see yourself. Chapter 5. The Trap of Financial Dependency. Money is one of the strongest anchors. Bills, responsibilities, family, these are real pressures. So even when the environment is harmful, leaving feels impossible. Real-life scenario. Carla supported her family. Her job drained her mentally, but quitting felt irresponsible. She stayed, not because she wanted to, but because she felt she had no choice. Key insight. Financial pressure can turn a temporary situation into a long-term trap. Chapter 6. Gaslighting in the Workplace. Toxic environments often manipulate your perception. You're told, you're too sensitive. That didn't happen. You're overreacting. Over time, you stop trusting your own judgment. Real-life scenario. A supervisor repeatedly denied saying harsh things, even when others heard it. Eventually, the employee started doubting their own memory. Key insight. Gaslighting keeps you confused, and confusion keeps you compliant. Chapter 7. The Culture of Overwork. In toxic workplaces, overworking is rewarded and expected. Rest becomes guilt. Boundaries become weakness. Real-life scenario. Kevin worked 12-hour days regularly. When he tried to leave on time once, his manager said, "Half day today." Everyone laughed. Kevin stayed late again. Key insight. When overwork becomes culture, burnout becomes inevitable. Chapter 8. The illusion of loyalty. You may feel loyal to your company, your boss, or your team, but loyalty in toxic environments is often one-sided. Real-life scenario. After years of dedication, Maria was laid off without notice. Her loyalty didn't protect her. Key insight. Loyalty should be mutual. If it's not, it's exploitation. Chapter 9. Social pressure and comparison. You see others staying, smiling, enduring, so you think, maybe this is just how work is. Real-life scenario. An office normalized stress. Everyone complained, but no one left. New employees assumed this was standard everywhere. Key insight. Just because something is common doesn't mean it's healthy. Chapter 10. The emotional exhaustion loop. Toxic workplaces drain your energy, and when you're exhausted, you don't have the strength to leave. So you stay, which makes you more exhausted. Real-life scenario. After work, Daniel felt too tired to job hunt, update his resume, or even think about change. Weeks turned into years. Key insight. Exhaustion keeps you stuck more effectively than fear. Chapter 11. Recognizing the breaking point. There comes a moment when something inside you shifts. It's not always loud. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet, a pause in the middle of your workday, a deep breath that feels heavier than usual, a thought that lingers longer than it should. Something isn't right. For a long time, you've been pushing through, telling yourself it's normal, telling yourself to be strong, but your mind and your body, they keep score, and eventually they stop whispering. They start demanding your attention. Maybe it shows up as exhaustion that sleep doesn't fix. Maybe it's anxiety before work, even on Sunday night. Maybe it's that moment in a meeting where you go silent, not because you have nothing to say, but because you don't feel safe saying it. That moment is not weakness. That moment is awareness. Let me tell you about Nina. Nina was known as the reliable one. Always on time, always prepared, always composed, until one meeting. Her manager blamed her for a mistake, one she didn't make, and instead of defending herself, she froze, not because she didn't know the truth, but because something inside her said, "It's not worth it anymore." That silence stayed with her, not just in that meeting, but after, on the way home, the next morning, the next week. That was her breaking point. Not the mistake, not the blame, but the realization that she had been enduring something she should never have accepted. And here's the truth most people don't talk about. Your breaking point doesn't mean you're weak. It means you've reached the limit of what your mind and body are willing to tolerate. It means clarity is starting to break through the noise. So if you felt that moment, that pause, that exhaustion, that quiet voice saying, "I can't keep doing this," don't ignore it. That's not the end of your strength. That's the beginning of your awareness. And awareness is where freedom starts. Chapter 12. The cost of staying too long. Staying feels safe. At least that's what you tell yourself. You have a routine, you know what to expect, you know how to survive each day. But what you don't always see is the cost, because the cost of staying isn't always immediate. It builds slowly, quietly, consistently. At first, it's just stress. You feel tired after work, then it becomes heavier. You start bringing that stress home. You think about work at night. You replay conversations. You prepare for problems that haven't even happened yet. And eventually, it starts affecting more than your mood. Your energy drops. Your patience disappears. Even the things you used to enjoy don't feel the same anymore. Let me tell you about Paolo. Paolo didn't hate his job at first. He just thought it was demanding. But over time, the demands increased. The pressure grew. The expectations never stopped, and neither did he. He worked through lunch, stayed late, answered messages at night, until one day his body responded: headaches, constant tension, exhaustion that sleep couldn't fix. He went to a doctor. There was no major illness, just stress, chronic, accumulated, ignored. Here, that's what most people don't realize. Your body doesn't separate work stress from life stress. It just feels stress, and when it's constant, it wears you down, mentally, emotionally, physically. So when you say, "I'll just stay a little longer," ask yourself, what is it costing me? Not just in time, not just in energy, but in health, in peace, in the version of yourself you're slowly losing, because staying may feel like the safer choice. But over time, it often becomes the more expensive one. Chapter 13, Separating Your Identity from Your Job. Who are you without your job? It sounds like a simple question, but for many people, it's difficult to answer, because somewhere along the way, your job stopped being something you do and became something you are. You introduce yourself by your role. You measure your worth by your performance. You judge your value based on how others at work treat you. And in a toxic environment, that becomes dangerous, because when your workplace devalues you, you start to believe you are less valuable. Let me tell you about Andrea. Andrea was proud of her job. She worked hard. She cared deeply. But her workplace didn't reflect that. Her ideas were ignored. Her contributions overlooked. Her effort taken for granted. Over time, something shifted. She stopped saying, "My work isn't appreciated," and started thinking, "Maybe I'm not good enough." That's the trap. When your identity is tied to your job, you don't just experience workplace problems, you experience personal doubt. But here's the truth. Your job is a role. It's something you perform. It is not your identity. You are not your title. You are not your performance review. You are not your manager's opinion of you. You existed before this job, and you will exist after it. So if your workplace is making you feel small, don't accept that as truth. Separate the two. Your job may be toxic, but that does not mean you are. Chapter 14, The Power of Awareness. Change doesn't start with action. It starts with awareness. Because before you can leave, before you can set boundaries, before you can rebuild, you have to see clearly. And clarity is uncomfortable, because it forces you to acknowledge things you've been avoiding, patterns you've been excusing, behaviors you've been tolerating. Let me tell you about Lisa. Lisa didn't think her workplace was toxic. She just thought she was stressed. But one day she started writing things down. Simple notes. How she felt before work, how she felt during meetings, how she felt after the day ended. And over time, a pattern appeared. Anxiety in the morning, tension throughout the day, exhaustion at night. Every day, that's when it hit her. This isn't normal. That's awareness. It's not dramatic, it's not instant, but it's powerful, because once you see something clearly, you can't unsee it. You can't go back to pretending it's okay. And that's the first real step toward change. So if you're unsure, start observing. Pay attention to how you feel. Notice the patterns. Listen to your reactions, because awareness is the moment the illusion starts to break. Chapter 15, Naming the Problem. There's power in naming something. Before you name it, it feels unclear, confusing, hard to explain. You just know something is wrong, but once you name it, everything changes. This is stress. This is burnout. This is toxic. And suddenly, it's not just a feeling anymore. It's something real, something identifiable. Chapter 16, Rebuilding Inner Confidence. Confidence doesn't come back all at once. It returns quietly in small moments. At first, it feels unfamiliar. You second-guess yourself. You hesitate before speaking, because for so long you were taught not to trust your voice. But confidence is not something you wait for. It's something you rebuild, one action at a time. Maybe it starts with something simple, speaking up in a meeting, sharing an idea even if your voice shakes, saying what you really think just once. That's how it begins, not perfectly, but intentionally. Let me tell you about Chris. After years in a toxic workplace, Chris stopped contributing, not because he lacked ideas, but because he believed they didn't matter. When he finally decided to change, he didn't try to become confident overnight. He just chose one moment, one meeting, one idea, one sentence, and when nothing bad happened. He tried again the next time. That's how confidence grows, not from certainty, but from repeated proof that you can survive being seen. You don't need to feel ready, you just need to begin. Chapter 17, Setting Mental Boundaries. You may not be able to leave immediately, but you can protect your mind, starting now. Because not everything deserves access to your thoughts. Not every comment deserves your attention. Not every criticism deserves your belief. Mental boundaries are invisible but powerful. They allow you to hear something without absorbing it. Let me explain. When someone speaks harshly to you, you have two choices. You can internalize it or you can observe it. One hurts you, the other protects you. Joy learned this the hard way. Every time her manager criticized her, she carried it home, replayed it, analyzed it, until she realized something. Not all feedback is truth. Some of it is projection. Some of it is poor leadership. Some of it has nothing to do with her, so she started separating the two. What is useful? What is not? And slowly, the weight became lighter. That's the power of mental boundaries. You don't have to accept everything you hear. Chapter 18, Understanding What You Deserve. Sometimes the hardest part is realizing you deserve better, because if you've been in a toxic environment long enough, your standards shrink. You start thinking, this is normal. This is just how work is. This is what I have to accept. But it's not. Respect is not optional. Fairness is not a bonus. Balance is not a luxury. They are standards. Rico didn't realize this until he left. In his new workplace, people listened when he spoke. They respected his time. They valued his effort. At first, it felt strange, almost uncomfortable, because he wasn't used to being treated well. That's when it hit him. This is what it's supposed to feel like. You don't realize what you deserve until you see what you were missing, and once you know, you can't go back to accepting less. Chapter 19, The First Thought of Leaving. It starts with a question, what if I left? At first, you ignore it, you push it aside. You tell yourself it's unrealistic, but the thought returns again and again. Quiet but persistent. Lee experienced this for months. Every stressful day, the thought appeared. What if I didn't have to do this anymore? But she kept dismissing it, until one day she didn't. She let the thought stay, and that's when something changed, because the moment you allow that thought, you open the door to possibility. You begin to imagine something different, and that's where change begins. Chapter 20, Overcoming Paralysis. Knowing you need to leave doesn't mean you will, because fear creates paralysis. You think about everything at once, the risk, the uncertainty, the what-ifs. And instead of moving, you freeze. Tom stayed stuck for a year in that exact place. He knew he needed to leave, but every time he thought about it, it felt overwhelming, until he changed one thing. He stopped thinking about everything and focused on one step, updating his resume. That's it. One small action, but that action created movement, and movement breaks paralysis. You don't need to solve everything, you just need to start. Chapter 21, Updating Your Self-Image. A toxic workplace doesn't just affect your day, it affects how you see yourself. You start to believe, I'm not good enough. I'm not capable. I'm not valuable. But that version of you was shaped by your environment, not by your true potential. Anna didn't realize this until she left. In a new environment, she thrived. Same skills, same person, different results. Because the problem was never her, it was where she was. You have to update your self-image, because who you think you are determines what you believe you can do. Chapter 22, The Importance of Support Systems. You don't have to go through this alone, but toxic environments often isolate you. They make you feel like no one else understands. No one else feels this way. But that's not true. When Marco finally opened up to a friend, everything shifted. For the first time, someone said, "That's not normal." And just like that, his perspective changed. Support systems don't fix everything, but they give you clarity, and sometimes clarity is all you need to take the next step. Chapter 23, Quietly Preparing Your Exit. Leaving doesn't have to be sudden. It can be strategic, it can be quiet. Ella didn't announce her plans, she prepared, saved money, updated her resume, applied quietly, and when the time came, she left with options, not panic. Preparation turns fear into control, and control makes leaving possible. Chapter 24, Financial Planning for Freedom. Money can keep you stuck, but it can also set you free. Even small savings matter, even small progress counts. Ken didn't have much at first, but he started saving consistently, little by little, until one day he had enough to choose. Financial freedom isn't about having everything. It's about having enough to decide. Chapter 25, Reclaiming Your Time. Your time has been taken from you. Now it's time to take some of it back. Start small. Leave on time once a week. Take your full lunch break. Disconnect after work. Mia started with just 2 days a week, and even that small change gave her a sense of control. Time is not just hours, it's energy, it's freedom, and every moment you reclaim reminds you that you still have power. Chapter 26, Learning to Say No. No is uncomfortable at first, but it's necessary because every time you say yes, when you want to say no, you give away your boundaries. Saying no doesn't make you difficult, it makes you aware, and awareness is strength. Chapter 27, Detaching Emotionally. Not everything deserves your energy. Not every situation deserves your reaction. Detachment is not indifference, it's protection. You do your work, you fulfill your role, but you stop carrying everything with you, and that changes everything. Chapter 28, Redefining Success. Success is not endurance. It's not staying in a place that drains you. Success is alignment, peace, growth, balance, and sometimes success looks like leaving. Chapter 29, Facing the Fear of Judgment. What will people think? This question holds many people back, but most of the time, people are not judging you. They're focused on their own lives, and those who matter will understand. Chapter 30, Taking the First Real Step. There's a difference between thinking and doing. The first real step changes everything, because once you act, you prove to yourself that change is possible, something you can confront. Let me tell you about Ben. For years, Ben thought he just needed to try harder. He believed the problem was his performance, his attitude, his effort. But one day, after talking to a friend, he said something out loud. "This place is toxic." And the moment he said it, something shifted. The blame he had been carrying lifted, because it was never just about him. It was the environment, the culture, the behavior around him, and once he named it, he stopped trying to fix himself for a problem that wasn't his. That's the power of naming. It brings clarity, it removes confusion, and most importantly, it gives you direction. Because once you know what you're dealing with, you can decide what to do next. Chapter 31, Exploring New Opportunities. At first, it feels unfamiliar. Looking outside your current workplace feels like stepping into the unknown. You scroll through job listings, you read descriptions, and a small voice inside you says, "Am I even qualified for this?" That doubt is not new. It was built over time. But here's what you start to notice. There are roles out there that value what you bring. There are environments that don't drain you. There are opportunities you couldn't see before because you were too focused on surviving where you are. Exploring doesn't mean committing. It just means allowing yourself to see that your current situation is not your only option. And sometimes, that realization alone is enough to change everything. Chapter 32, Rebuilding Skills and Confidence. Confidence doesn't just return on its own. You rebuild it. By reminding yourself what you can do, you revisit your strengths, you practice your skills, you invest in yourself again. At first it feels slow, but every small improvement sends a message to your mind. I am capable. Because you were never incapable. You were just in an environment that made you forget. Chapter 33, the first interview after burnout. Your first interview feels different. You're not just answering questions. You're rebuilding belief. Your voice may shake. You may second-guess your answers, but something deeper is happening. You showed up, and that matters. Because this is no longer about proving yourself to others. It's about proving to yourself that you can move forward. Chapter 34, recognizing healthy workplaces. Not all workplaces are the same, and now you start to notice the difference. Healthy environments don't rely on fear. They don't demand constant sacrifice. They don't silence your voice. Instead, they respect your time. They value communication. They encourage growth. At first, it might feel unfamiliar, but that's because you've been used to something else. Now you begin to see clearly. Chapter 35, trusting yourself again. For a long time, you doubted your instincts, you questioned your reactions, you second-guessed your feelings, but slowly, you begin to trust yourself again. You listen to what feels right. You pay attention to what feels wrong, and this time, you don't ignore it. Chapter 36, letting go of guilt. Leaving can feel like betrayal. You think about your team, your responsibilities, the expectations placed on you, but staying at the cost of yourself is not loyalty, it's sacrifice, and not the healthy kind. Letting go of guilt is part of reclaiming your freedom. Chapter 37, the final decision. There comes a moment when thinking turns into knowing. You're no longer unsure. You're no longer debating. You just know. This is not where I'm meant to stay. And that clarity changes everything. Chapter 38, resigning. There's a moment before you do it. A quiet moment where everything feels still. You've thought about this for weeks, maybe months. You've gone back and forth. Doubted yourself, reconsidered, but now you're here. You open your laptop, you stare at the screen, and for a second your mind goes blank. Because this isn't just about writing a message, it's about closing a chapter. You begin typing, carefully, formally, professionally, but underneath those words is something much deeper. Relief, fear, freedom, all at once. You read it again and again. Your finger hovers over the send button, and in that moment, a voice tries to stop you. What if this is a mistake? What if you regret it? What if you're not ready? But then another voice speaks, quieter, stronger. I can't stay. And that's the truth. Not because it's easy to leave, but because it's no longer possible to stay. You press send, and just like that, it's done. Nothing around you changes immediately. The room is the same. The day continues, but inside, something shifts. The weight you've been carrying begins to lift, because for the first time in a long time, you chose yourself. Chapter 39, the emotional aftermath. You thought it would feel simple, relief and that's it, but it's not. It's layered. You feel lighter, but also uncertain. You feel proud, but also afraid, because now there's space, and with space comes thought. What happens next? Did I do the right thing? What if things don't work out? These questions are normal, because even when you leave something toxic, you're still leaving something familiar, and the unfamiliar can feel uncomfortable, but here's what matters. You didn't leave because it was easy. You left because it was necessary, and that decision deserves patience, so let yourself feel everything. The relief, the fear, the uncertainty, because all of it means you're moving forward. Chapter 40, the first day after leaving. You wake up, and for a moment, you forget. Then it hits you. You don't have to go back. There's no rush, no pressure, no anxiety waiting for you, just space. At first it feels unfamiliar. Your mind still expects the stress. The urgency, the noise, but it's not there, so you sit in the quiet, and slowly, you begin to feel something else, peace. Not excitement, not relief in a dramatic way, just calm, and in that calm, you realize how much you needed this. Chapter 41, Rediscovering Yourself. When the noise fades, you start to hear yourself again. Your thoughts feel clearer, your emotions feel more grounded. You notice things you didn't before, what you enjoy, what drains you, what truly matters to you, because for so long, you were in survival mode, reacting, enduring, pushing through. But now, you have space to reflect, to reconnect, to remember who you were before you started losing parts of yourself, and that rediscovery is powerful. Chapter 42, Healing from Burnout. Burnout doesn't disappear the moment you leave. It lingers in your energy, in your thoughts, in your habits. You may still feel tired. Even after resting, you may still feel anxious, even without a reason. And that's okay, because burnout is not just exhaustion, it's depletion, and recovery takes time, so you slow down, you stop pushing yourself. You allow your mind to settle, and little by little, you begin to feel like yourself again. Chapter 43, Relearning Rest. Rest feels strange at first. You sit down and feel like you should be doing something. You take a break and feel guilty because you've been conditioned to equate rest with laziness. But rest is not a reward, it's a necessity. It's how your mind resets, how your body recovers, so you practice it, even when it feels uncomfortable, until one day, it doesn't feel wrong anymore. It feels natural. Chapter 44, Rebuilding Confidence. Confidence doesn't return in one moment. It rebuilds in layers. You take small steps, make small decisions, and each one reminds you of something important. You are capable. You always were. You just needed the right environment to see it again. Chapter 45, Creating Healthy Boundaries. This time you do things differently. You don't wait for things to go wrong. You set boundaries early. You protect your time, your energy, your peace, and even if it feels uncomfortable, you don't ignore it, because now you understand. Boundaries are not barriers, they are protection. Chapter 46, Choosing Better Environments. You become more aware, more selective. You no longer accept everything. You observe, you question, you evaluate, because you've learned that where you work shapes how you feel. Chapter 47, Recognizing Red Flags Early. What once felt normal now stands out. You begin to notice the small things. A manager who avoids accountability. A culture where overwork is praised. A team that communicates through fear instead of respect. Before, you ignored these signs. You gave them the benefit of the doubt. You told yourself, maybe it's just temporary. But now you see patterns, and patterns tell the truth. A single bad day is human, but repeated behavior reveals the environment. The lesson here is simple. Don't wait for things to get worse before you acknowledge what's already there. Early awareness gives you power. It allows you to make decisions sooner, to protect yourself before the damage becomes deeper. Because the cost of ignoring red flags is always higher later. Chapter 48, Communicating Your Needs. There was a time when you stayed silent. You avoided conflict. You adjusted yourself to fit expectations. But now you understand something important. Silence often leads to resentment. When you don't express your needs, they don't disappear, they build until one day they come out as frustration, exhaustion, or withdrawal. So you start speaking earlier, not aggressively, not emotionally, but clearly. I need clearer expectations. I won't be available after this time. I'd like feedback on this. And something changes. You stop waiting for others to guess what you need. You take responsibility for expressing it. The lesson. Communication is not confrontation, it's clarity, and clarity prevents unnecessary suffering. Chapter 49, Protecting Your Energy. Energy is one of your most valuable resources, but for a long time, you gave it away without thinking, to unnecessary stress, to toxic conversations, to situations that drained you. Now you become intentional. You start asking, is this worth my energy? And sometimes the answer is no. You don't engage in every conflict. You don't react to every comment. You don't carry every problem. This doesn't make you careless. It makes you aware, because protecting your energy means preserving your ability to function, grow, and live fully. The lesson: you don't need to respond to everything. You just need to choose what truly matters. Chapter 50, Redefining Work-Life Balance. Before, balance was something you hoped for. Now, it's something you create. You realize that work will always take more if you don't set limits, so you define those limits. You decide when your workday ends. You decide what you take home and what you leave behind. And most importantly, you honor those decisions. Balance is not about equal time, it's about sustainable living. The lesson: if you don't define your boundaries, your work will define them for you. Chapter 51, Building a Healthier Routine. Your routine becomes your foundation. Not rigid, not overwhelming, but supportive. You create structure that helps you function better. Time to work, time to rest, time to disconnect. And over time, this structure reduces stress, because when your days are intentional, they feel more stable. The lesson: consistency creates calm, and calm allows you to grow. Chapter 52, Strengthening Self-Worth. For a long time, your worth felt conditional, based on performance, on feedback, on how others treated you. But now you start to rebuild it from within. You recognize your strengths. You acknowledge your effort. You value yourself, regardless of external validation. This doesn't happen overnight, but every time you choose self-respect, your sense of worth becomes stronger. The lesson: self-worth is not given by others. It is recognized by you. Chapter 53, Letting Go of the Past. The past doesn't disappear easily. Memories return. Moments replay. You think about what happened, what you endured, what you could have done differently, but holding on to it keeps you connected to it. So you begin to let go, not by denying it, but by accepting it. Yes, that happened. Yes, it affected me. But it does not define me anymore. The lesson: letting go is not forgetting. It's choosing not to carry the weight forward. Chapter 54, Forgiving Yourself. This may be one of the hardest parts: forgiving yourself for staying too long, for ignoring the signs, for not leaving sooner. But here's the truth: you made the best decisions you could. With the awareness you had at the time, you didn't stay because you were weak. You stayed because you were trying to make things work, and there is no shame in that. The lesson: self-forgiveness is not about excusing the past. It's about freeing yourself from it. Chapter 55, Understanding Your Growth. When you look back, you see the difference in how you think, in how you respond, in what you accept and what you no longer tolerate. Growth is not always obvious in the moment, but over time, it becomes undeniable. You are not the same person anymore, and that is something to recognize. The lesson: growth often feels uncomfortable while it's happening, but powerful when you look back. Chapter 56, Embracing Change. Change used to feel like risk. Now it feels like opportunity, because you've experienced what happens when you stay in the wrong place. So you become more open, more willing to adjust, more willing to move forward. The lesson: change is not something to fear, it's something to navigate. Chapter 57, Finding Meaning Again. Work is no longer just survival, it becomes something more. You look for purpose, for alignment, for something that feels right, and even if it's not perfect, it feels different because it no longer drains you completely. The lesson: meaning doesn't have to be grand. It just has to feel real to you. Chapter 58, Helping Others Recognize Toxicity. You begin to notice others who are where you used to be. You hear it in their words, see it in their behavior, and sometimes you speak up, not to tell them what to do, but to share perspective, because you understand something they may not yet see, the lesson. Your experience becomes valuable when it helps others find clarity. Chapter 59, Sharing Your Story. There is power in sharing, not for attention, not for validation, but for connection, because someone out there is going through what you went through, and hearing your story might be the moment they realize they're not alone. The lesson. Your story is not just yours. It can be someone else's turning point. Chapter 60, Breaking the Cycle. You become aware of patterns, what you tolerated before, what you accepted without question, and this time you choose differently. You don't repeat the same cycle, because awareness gives you the ability to change it. The lesson. Breaking the cycle requires conscious decisions, not automatic reactions. Chapter 61, Building Resilience. Resilience is not just endurance, it's understanding. You don't just survive difficult situations. You learn from them, you adapt, you grow, and that growth makes you stronger in a different way. The lesson. True resilience is built through awareness, not just survival. Chapter 62, Creating a Personal Standard. You define your limits, what you accept, what you walk away from, and you don't compromise those standards easily, because now you understand their importance. The lesson. Standards are not restrictions, they are protection. Chapter 63, Trusting New Opportunities. You allow yourself to try again, without assuming the worst, without carrying all the fear forward. You stay aware, but not closed. The lesson. Growth requires openness, even after difficult experiences. Chapter 64, Finding Joy in Work Again. Joy returns slowly, in small moments. A good conversation, a productive day, a sense of progress, and you realize work doesn't have to feel heavy all the time. The lesson. Joy doesn't come from perfection, it comes from alignment. Chapter 65, Maintaining Boundaries Long-Term. Boundaries are not a one-time decision. They are daily choices. You reinforce them, you adjust them, and most importantly, you respect them. The lesson. Consistency is what makes boundaries effective. Chapter 66, Staying Aware. Awareness becomes a habit. You pay attention to your environment, to your reactions, to patterns around you, and that awareness keeps you from falling back into the same situations. The lesson. Awareness is ongoing, not a one-time realization. Chapter 67, Supporting Others. You become someone others can turn to, because you understand, not just the situation, but the feeling, and sometimes that understanding is enough. The lesson. Support doesn't always require solutions. Sometimes it just requires presence. Chapter 68, Redefining Stability. Stability is no longer just about income. It's about peace, about consistency, about feeling safe in your environment. The lesson. True stability includes mental and emotional well-being. Chapter 69, Building Confidence in Decisions. You trust yourself more, not because you're always right, but because you know you can handle the outcome. The lesson. Confidence is not certainty, it's trust in your ability to respond. Chapter 70, Letting Go of Fear. Fear doesn't disappear, but it no longer controls you. You acknowledge it without letting it stop you. The lesson. Courage is not the absence of fear, it's action despite it. Chapter 71, Becoming Your Own Advocate. For a long time you waited. You waited for someone to recognize your effort, to defend you, to speak up on your behalf. But now you understand something different. No one will consistently advocate for you the way you can for yourself. And that realization changes everything. Being your own advocate doesn't mean being aggressive. It doesn't mean fighting every situation. It means being clear, clear about what you deserve, clear about what you will accept, clear about what you will walk away from. You begin to speak differently, not with hesitation, but with intention. I'm not comfortable with that. I need more clarity here. This doesn't align with my role. At first, it feels uncomfortable because you're breaking a pattern of silence, of adjusting, of minimizing your needs. But every time you speak up, you reinforce something important. My voice matters. And over time, it becomes natural. You stop waiting for permission. You stop second-guessing your right to speak. Because you know now. Advocating for yourself is not optional, it's necessary. The lesson. If you don't define how you should be treated, others will define it for you. Chapter 72, Choosing Growth Over Comfort. Comfort feels safe. It's familiar, predictable, easy to stay in. But comfort can also become a quiet trap, because not all comfort is healthy. Sometimes it's just familiar discomfort. You stay in situations you've outgrown because they feel known, even if they don't feel right. But growth requires movement, and movement is uncomfortable. It asks you to try something new, to take risks, to face uncertainty, and for a moment, that discomfort can feel like a step backward, but it's not. It's expansion. Think about every major shift in your life. It didn't happen in comfort. It happened in uncertainty, in decision, in action. So now, when you feel that discomfort, you don't run from it, you ask, is this discomfort leading me forward? And if the answer is yes, you lean into it. The lesson. Comfort keeps you where you are. Growth takes you where you're meant to be. Chapter 73, Living with Intention. For a long time, you operated on autopilot. You woke up, went to work, got through the day without questioning much, because survival doesn't leave room for reflection. But now, things are different. You begin to live intentionally. You ask yourself, why am I doing this? Does this align with who I want to become? Is this adding value to my life? And suddenly your choices change. You become more selective with your time, your energy, your commitments. You stop saying yes automatically. You stop following patterns blindly. Instead, you choose consciously, and that awareness transforms your life. Because when you live with intention, you don't just exist, you create. The lesson. A life lived on autopilot follows patterns. A life lived with intention creates direction. Chapter 74, Protecting Your Future Self. Every decision you make today shapes your future, but for a long time, you were focused on getting through the present. Now you think differently. You consider the long-term impact. You ask, if I continue like this, where will I be? Is this sustainable? Is this helping or harming my future self? And that perspective changes your choices. You start setting boundaries earlier. You avoid situations that drain you. You prioritize what truly matters, because you're no longer reacting. You're preparing for a future where you are not exhausted, not overwhelmed, not stuck, but stable, clear, in control. The lesson. Your future self is shaped by your present awareness. Protect that version of you. Chapter 75, Creating a Healthy Career Path. Your career is no longer something that just happens to you. It's something you build intentionally. You stop chasing roles just for status or salary alone. You start asking deeper questions. Will this environment support me? Will this role allow me to grow? Does this align with my values? And those questions guide your decisions. You begin to design your path, not based on pressure, not based on comparison, but based on alignment. And that alignment creates sustainability, because a healthy career is not just about success, it's about longevity. The lesson. A strong career is not built on sacrifice alone. It's built on alignment and awareness. Chapter 76, Defining Personal Freedom. Freedom used to feel like an idea, something distant, something unclear, but now you understand it. Freedom is not just leaving a toxic environment, it's having the ability to choose to choose where you work, how you spend your time, what you tolerate and what you don't. It's waking up without that heavy feeling. It's knowing that your life is not controlled by something that drains you, and that kind of freedom is powerful because it's not given, it's created. The lesson: freedom is not the absence of responsibility, it's the presence of choice. Chapter 77, Living Without Toxicity. Peace feels different, at first almost unfamiliar, because you're used to tension, to pressure, to constant stress. But now, there's space, conversations feel lighter, work feels manageable, your mind feels clearer, and you begin to realize this is what normal feels like. Not chaos, not anxiety, just stability, and that stability allows you to function better, to think clearer, to feel more grounded. The lesson: peace is not boring, it's what allows everything else in your life to improve. Chapter 78, Becoming Unstoppable. You're not the same person anymore, not because life became easier, but because you became stronger. You've faced difficulty. You've made hard decisions, you've stepped into uncertainty, and you came out different, more aware, more confident, more in control. Now, challenges don't stop you the same way. They don't define you, they don't overwhelm you, because you've learned something important. You can handle change, you can handle uncertainty, you can handle growth. The lesson: being unstoppable doesn't mean having no obstacles. It means knowing you can move forward despite them. Chapter 79, Owning Your Story. For a long time, you may have wanted to forget what you went through, to move on without looking back. But now you see it differently. Your story is not something to hide. It's something to understand, because every experience shaped who you are today. The challenges, the mistakes, the realizations. All of it added to your growth, and when you own your story, you take control of it, it no longer controls you. The lesson: your past is not your weakness, it's part of your strength when you choose to learn from it. Chapter 80, The Final Truth: You Were Never Stuck. For so long, it felt like there was no way out, like you were trapped in something you couldn't change, but now you see the truth. You were never truly stuck. You were navigating something difficult, learning, adapting, trying to understand. And that takes time, because awareness doesn't come instantly. It builds through experience, through reflection, through moments of clarity. And once that awareness becomes clear, everything shifts. You begin to see options, to recognize patterns, to make different choices. And that's when you realize the situation may have been limiting, but you were not. You had the ability to change your path. You just needed to see it first. The lesson: you were never without options. You just hadn't seen them yet. And now that you do, there's no going back, only forward.